What's up, guys? I'm EJ. I'm joined by Kendall. We're doing another NBA draft comparisons video. This time, we'll be talking about some of the top international prospects in this draft. Kendall, this is actually, I think, a really good crop of international players. I think that there are obviously the top 4 or 5 guys that are the American players or guys who played, ball in America that a lot of people have talked about. But I think that this is actually a crop of international guys that are really talented, and I think that will be impact players in the NBA. So I'm excited to see where we landed when it comes to comparisons for these prospects.
Yeah, I think you're talking about an international class that I think is stronger than last year. Stronger than I think a lot of years that we've had. I mean, there's no Luka Doncic in this class, but it's really deep. I think it's 4 guys that could wind up being really impact players in the NBA. And in my opinion, there's a lot of debate about who's the 6th best player in this draft. I think the 6th best player in the draft is in the international crop. So we'll talk about that when we give out our comps.
Yeah, I'm excited to see who you think that is. But let's talk about these guys, and I'm gonna start with Josh Giddey, 6'7", wing player from Australia. And to me, it's funny. I describe him as a wing, but he's really definitely kind of a primary ball handler, and maybe will play point guard in the NBA. And given that is the position that I think he may play in the NBA, I compared him to Greivis Vasquez, former Maryland Terrapin. He played for the New Orleans Hornets. He played for the Toronto Raptors. To me, I see a lot of similarities in their game. Both of them are really good passers. Giddey, I think that's probably the best part of his game. For a guy to be 6'7", allows him to see the floor well. He has great vision, and then he's a very accurate passer. He's great in the pick and roll. He's great at hitting the skip passes. Really good ball handler. And what I like about both guys is, both were also really adept finishers. Neither guy necessarily great athletically, but their ability still to get their shots off when they get into the paint and to finish well, I think are 2 big traits about their game. Greivis Vasquez was a point guard, but he also was about 6'6", so great size there. With Giddey being 6'7", similar profile in that regard. Both guys also not great shooters. I think Vasquez actually may be a better shooter than Giddey is now. Giddey, I think, can get to maybe Vasquez's level by the time he was a really good NBA player. So, but I like Josh Giddey's game. Defensively, there may be some issues there, and that's something that Vasquez had some of his problems with as well. But overall, I think that I think the Vasquez kind of archetype is where I see from him right now.
Yeah, that's a really good comp. I think Greivis Vasquez, was a good player. Might have actually been a little bit before his time. I think you might even see the coaches now do a little more creative stuff with a guy like Greivis Vasquez. But yeah, I mean, look, when we think about Josh Giddey, I mean, he's a point guard right now. And so Greivis Vasquez was a guy that was a pure point guard. I don't know if he's going to be able to play point guard in the NBA. Again, he may initiate some offense. He may, he may be a primary ball handler, but, it's going to be tough, because, I mean, if he is, then you're talking about a guy, it's a tough position to play. I actually like him probably a little bit more on the wing at the NBA level. He's going to have to improve as a shooter a little bit, but I think the guy, if we're talking about him playing more on the wing, but doing some of the playmaking stuff is Joe Ingles. And, it's a cardinal sin when you're talking about comping a guy from the same country or from the same school. Yeah. But, but there, when you're talking about international basketball, there's always going to be similarities between guys that come from the same country. And really any international sport, you see it in boxing, you see it in MMA. But yeah, I think in basketball, you see that there's a lot of similarities between the style of basketball that a guy like Joe Ingles plays to the way Josh Giddey plays. Josh Giddey, his athleticism makes Luka Doncic look like Jalen Green. And Joe Ingles, I don't know if it's natural or if it's his age, but Joe Ingles is also a guy that can't really jump over a phone book. But it hasn't stopped him from being one of the best, second unit players in the NBA. And I think, Utah would be a dream fit for Josh Giddey to end up in, with the way they move the basketball and the way their players move without the basketball. I mean, he'd be super deadly with his passing ability, his cutting ability, and his size. But in terms of upside, obviously a lot of people have thrown out Luka Doncic and things of that nature. I don't know if he's got that much shake and that much wiggle in his game right now. I think I like him a little bit more to a Joe Ingles type.
Yeah, and I mean the Doncic, unfortunately, like just like with Dirk, with Doncic, when the great European guy comes up, you're gonna have a lot of guys who are gonna make a lot of money off of the Luka Doncic comp. And I understand some of it with Giddey, but I mean Doncic is a tank. Giddey is not that physically strong. A lot of the reason why Doncic is able to be so good offensively, despite not having necessarily the greatest athleticism, is because he's so strong. So I don't necessarily see that. The only thing with sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and let's be honest with just the level of competition and the production,
right.
and Giddey was a good player in the NBL. Doncic was the MVP in the EuroLeague coming out. So I mean, it's a massive MVP in the EuroLeague and the ACB. So it's a much different level of competition and much different level of player.
Yes, exactly, and that's a fair point there. But Giddey's a good player, and I'm excited to see where he ends up in this draft. I want to talk about Usman Garuba from playing for Real Madrid, Luka Doncic's former team. So it's a pretty good segue there. Yeah. So I'll tell you what, when we talked about him a little bit, and I do want to make the point that if there was a player who I've seen since Draymond Green came to the league that reminds me a little bit of Draymond Green, it is Garuba. But I don't like to run to Hall of Fame.
The Hall of Fame.
I don't like running to Hall of Fame comparisons. But I see some of the things. But the NBA comparison I will land on for Garuba, much lower. But I think that actually he'll have a higher ceiling than this guy. I went with Ronnie Turiaf. Former Los Angeles Laker, former Knick, former Warrior.
A lot of Laker fans are like, "Oh, that guy,"
and former Gonzaga Bulldog as well. But look, to me, Garuba is about 6'8", maybe 6'9" on a good day. Similar size to Turiaf, but they both have great wingspans. Again, Turiaf had a 7-foot wingspan. Garuba's wingspan is about 7'2". They're both excellent shot blockers. Like, Garuba has no reason to be as good a shot blocker as he is. Yet he gets off the floor really well. He's super energetic. He's great in pick and roll coverage, and he can switch on smaller guards. And to me, Turiaf had some of that ability, but again, it's some of these guys so weird comparing them because I feel like Turiaf in today's NBA would be a better player because people would see what he could do as kind of a smaller, big guy who could still move, who could defend the rim. And Ronnie Turiaf, I think especially at Gonzaga and earlier in his career, was a good passer, like a really good a better ball handler than maybe gave him credit for, and was really good in kind of passing out of the high post. Garuba has shown that he could handle the ball and push it himself, so he even goes beyond Turiaf in that regard. But I think their impact early on will be similar. Turiaf could be a terror finishing around the basket, and we've seen Garuba throw down some really vicious dunks as well. So I think that's a pretty decent comp. Neither guy could shoot. Garuba can't shoot at all, and Turiaf couldn't shoot either. So I think that's a pretty good fit.
Yeah, I mean, shooting for Garuba is going to be something that is going to be really important in terms of his overall upside. He's tried to develop it. We'll see. I think it's part of the reason why he's so low because I mean, look, you mentioned the Luka Doncic thing. He's a guy that also was playing, at a high level at Real Madrid at 16, 17 years old and was in the starting lineup. He broke some of Luka Doncic's records for age and, playing time at Real Madrid. But, it's a comp for me. I mean, it's a little bit of a cop-out because it's kind of just the guy, the archetype. But I'm going to say Kenneth Faried. Kenneth Faried is like, the obvious when you're talking about the energy, undersized, big. I think Garuba's got a little bit more skill than Faried. But I think there's a lot of similarities in how he'll be used in the NBA. And Faried, I feel like Faried, another guy similar to Vasquez. I don't say he's before his time because he was very good in Denver, but I think he'd be a different player now than when he came up. And look, I mean, he was phased out of the league. I don't know if it was because he never was able to adjust to the changing of the NBA. I think that's part of it, and that's what Garuba is going to have to adapt with as well.
Yeah, I think there were some character things too. I think he could have kept playing in the NBA, but
right.
I think that was part of it.
But yeah, Garuba is a is a very good passer. I think the shot is gonna. I think it's gonna get there. It's not there now, but I like when I see guys attempt jump shots. That means that they're confident. That means they work on some level. All right, that or their case. And playing in Europe, like I don't think Pablo Lasso, the head coach, would be playing Usman Garuba as much and relying on him as much as he would if he was a head case. So I think that they trust him and they want him to shoot that shot. And so I think Garuba is going to improve in that aspect, and that's something Free didn't have. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, I thought about DeJuan Blair as well, but Blair is a little stronger. I think Garuba might be a little bouncier.
Yeah, I think the only thing about Blair and Fareed, in which I give Garuba the edge on, is neither of those guys were good defensive players. They were great rebounders, but
Right.
they were terrible defensive players. In fact, that was I think the main reason why Fareed didn't stick was the idea that he's 6'7" and he really didn't rim protect, and in the post he was undersized, so that kind of gave you a tough beat there, and he wasn't like you could put him on 3 men either. So that was a problem. Garuba, to me, he projects to be an excellent defensive player, and that's why I went to Ronnie Turiaf, because Turiaf was a great rim protector, a really good defensive player. He's a better rebounder than Turiaf. He's more in the rebounding aspect and the athletic aspect. He may be more towards those other guys, like especially Fareed. Blair wasn't a great athlete, but for Fareed that makes more sense. But I think the defensive aspect to his game is why I went with.
I think his upside is way higher than Turiaf.
I agree with that.
I think he's Turiaf now. I mean, again, we're talking about a guy that can start for Real Madrid in the ACB.
Mm-hmm.
That's talking about Turiaf. I mean, Turiaf's obviously, he might be retired now, but I don't know if Turiaf is, he's probably in his prime is starting for Real Madrid, but, that's Garuba at 18, 19 years old. What's Garuba?
Yeah, but we forget, I mean, Turiaf was playing, like, 4 of those Lakers teams that were pretty good.
Right.
Like, he wasn't like he was riding the bench,
Yeah.
And then he played for the Warriors. They weren't that good, but he was playing a lot of minutes for them. So it wasn't a guy, like, he played 10 years in the league. He wasn't like a guy that was just like riding at the end of the bench. He was a functional player, not necessarily a starter. And I think to me Garuba, and the reason why maybe people will be upset about this Turiaf thing, I mean, to me Garuba is very much a mold of clay. So I think that the framework of what he has is very similar to Turiaf. And again, I actually think Turiaf would be a better player in today's NBA than he was when he played. But I think he has a ceiling to go even beyond that. But I think right now he's still very raw.
Is there a little bit of Joakim Noah in Garuba?
I could see that, but I mean Noah is legit 6'10", 6'11".
Right. He's
like that's the height thing is why I like the Fareed and the Turiaf comps a little better there. But I see some of that. But it's the size there. Let's talk about the Turkish big man Alperen Sengun. This one I went with another European big to compare. I did Marcin Gortat. I think he's probably about an inch shorter. Gortat is listed 6'11" most places. Alperen,
the Polish Hammer.
Yeah, Alperen's about 6'10", maybe 6'9". But I think that their games are really similar. Both really advanced scorers early on in their career. Both could be really good in pick and roll action. Just like you called them the Polish Hammer. I mean, Gortat was just a sledgehammer when he got the ball on the pick and roll going downhill, or when he got to finish around the basket. Sengun, for a guy who's so young, it's kind of crazy how physical he is. I mean, he plays with a ferocity around the basket. Sometimes I'm actually afraid when I watch some of these clips. I'm like, I feel like he's gonna get hurt the way he just goes in and attacks the rim with such ferocity. But he plays with an aggression that I really like. They're both also really good passers as well. I think Sengun, I mean, he has some really slick passes out of the post, some back behind the back, some over the heads, and I've seen Gortat make some really nice passes. Maybe not as flashy, but definitely in that post, some of those one-handed passes he would do when he'd get double teamed. Neither guy necessarily the greatest rim protector, but they both use verticality really well, and I think that I've seen Sengun do that a bunch. And Sengun is an animal in the offensive glass, which is also where Gortat could hurt you. So I think that, to me, this was a pretty easy one for me. And if he's Marcin Gortat, that's a pretty good pick if you pick that guy. I think that he may end up being a steal in this draft if he ends up falling.
Yeah, I mean, I teased that there was a guy that had ranked 6th in this draft in this video, and it's Alperen Sengun. If you're asking me what my comp is, I'm gonna go to a future Hall of Famer, and I don't like doing it. But look, I mean, last year I probably went out a little bit on a limb with the Elton Brand, Isaiah Stewart, but Isaiah Stewart had a really good rookie season, and Elton Brand in today's NBA, he still would have been a great player, but it's a different NBA, so Isaiah Stewart is going to be used slightly differently, and the effectiveness may not have translated as well as it may have been, 20 years ago. But when it comes to Sengun, the guy I'm going to be comparing him to is Pau Gasol. I think there's a lot of similarities to Pau Gasol in just his movements, his productivity. The guy was a double-double machine playing in the Turkish Super League for Besiktas. He at 19, what is he, 18, 19 years old. I mean, it's unheard of.
He's 18.
He's 18 years old, dominating the Turkish league. To me, we're talking about his, like EJ mentioned, the frame, his aggressiveness, ability to rebound, but then also the skill that comes with that. I think Pau Gasol might be a little bit lofty, but I think there are a lot of similarities in the way they play, and he may not have the career that Pau Gasol had because, again, it's a different NBA, bigs. He's going to be more of a 5 than Pau Gasol ever was. Maybe 20 years ago, he may have been a 4 playing next to another big, but now he's a definite center. Maybe Pau Gasol is a definite center now. As we've seen the last 8 years, he's been only a 5. But yeah, no, I think there are a lot of similarities to Pau Gasol, and I wonder if Sengun's last name was Gasol, where is he getting drafted? I see a lot of mock drafts having him at the bottom of the first round. I just can't imagine if he had that pedigree, if he would be, given his production, that he would be drafted as low as some people. I'd be surprised if he gets out of lottery.
I mean, Sengun's interesting to me because what I told you was I feel like this was 10 years ago. I think he's 100% a top 10 pick. I don't think it's even a question. Because one of the things I do like about the Pau Gasol comparison, and I thought about Gasol as well, was the post play is exceptional. I mean, his footwork when he gets down low, and he has right hook, left hook, counter moves, up and unders. I mean, he has pretty much every move. And they're pretty sound. Like he was doing stuff that I felt like it didn't look like he couldn't do this in the NBA. Like I didn't see anything in terms of him functioning on the block where if he was going up against the NBA, an NBA big, he'd have a problem. The only thing would be, if he was going against a guy who was 7'1", like okay, there were some times where because he's 6'10", 6'9", like he's not the tallest guy, and that's kind of why I shied away from Gasol because Gasol is 7 foot legitimately, higher than 7 foot. So that was why I kind of paused because Gasol, some of what made him great was he's playing against power forwards and these guys are 6'9" trying to guard him and they have no chance. Those guys are going to be matched up evenly with Sengun. But I think their games are similar.
Today's NBA, I don't know.
Oh, that's true. I'm talking about if you're playing the 5 though.
Right, fair enough.
The 5 men, there are a lot of guys who will be taller than him.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch some of his tape playing for Turkey, which I always love watching international players playing for their country rather than their club team. He was dominant, playing on the senior team, which again shows you he's not, this isn't a guy where it's like, like Dragan Bender coming out where, he dominated in the FIBA under 15 tournament, and it's like he's playing against guys that aren't NBA competition, but, and then, look, Sengun dominated in the under 19 tournament as well, but when he played for the senior team, I saw him matched up against Jonas Jerebko, and he just dominated. And look, Jerebko is not a 5; he's a 4 in the NBA, but he ate him alive.
Yeah.
So that's legitimate NBA. Jerebko wasn't a superstar by any means, but he could still play in the NBA today if he wanted to.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the fact that you saw that level of success on the international stage against an NBA caliber big man
in a World
speaks
Cup qualifier
right.
or an
Speaks very
Olympic qualifier that they needed to win.
yeah, speaks highly of Sengun. I think he's a really good player and one of the steals in this draft potentially. Last guy will be Filip Petrusev, Serbian big man, formerly of the Gonzaga Bulldogs. I went with Bobby Portis for my comparison for Filip Petrusev. Bobby Portis is a great shooter. Petrusev has turned himself into a great shooter, which is kind of crazy to me because when I watched him at Gonzaga, he was a good shooter, but that wasn't what Gonzaga was trying to get him to do, or they were running offense through that. Like any jump shots he took were emergency shots, and then to watch him play for Serbia, where they were hunting, picking pops with him, was really exceptional. He doesn't have the quickest release, but he has a smooth shooting stroke. When he gets space, it's lights out. I think it's going every time he shoots it. Again, he's really good in the pick and pop game. He also has some face-up potential as a scorer. I saw him face up guys and stare them down and pull up in the mid-range. Again, these are all aspects of Bobby Portis' game that we've seen flourish throughout his career, especially this past season with the Milwaukee Bucks. And then, I think he even may be a little more aggressive than Bobby Porter in terms of around the rim. Petrusev is an underrated athlete. I mean, he could really finish on guys strong and aggressively. Neither guy necessarily the greatest defender, but I think the offensive game for Petrusev is very similar. And I think that level of production you saw from Petrusev, again, talking about another young big man playing in the Adriatic League, that's a good league. He led the league in scoring. He averaged 23 points and 11 rebounds. Yeah. He's 21 years old. I mean, that's extremely impressive. And, Bobby Portis obviously didn't play overseas, but he was a very productive player at Arkansas early in his career. And Petrusev was a very productive player at Gonzaga. I think Petrusev is going to end up being a very productive player in the NBA. I think Bobby Portis would be the comp for me.
Yeah, and you mentioned, his success in the Adriatic League. He not only did he have a great season amongst the players this year, like he was the MVP, he was the best player in the league, but he had one of the best seasons ever in the Adriatic League. I mean, if you look at the history of the Adriatic League and you look at previous MVPs, Nikola Jokic, Nurkic, Saric, as Shaq says, anyone with an itch in his last name, played in the Adriatic League. And, he surpassed all of them when it comes to all the player efficiency and a lot of statistics. So, incredible season by Petrusev in other drafts. And just another, look, bigs, we just don't value bigs as we used to. I mean, a guy like Petrusev typically should be a lottery pick, but for whatever reason, he's dropped. To me, he's a tough one, I think, to find a comp for. The guy I landed on was Daniel Theis. Some of the stuff you saw in terms of, the jump shot, the ability to finish at the rim. I don't know if he'll ever be a defensive stalwart. Theis might be a little better of a shot blocker, but Petrusev has size to him where I think he will be playing a lot of the five at the NBA level. Really good rebounder. I think he's got more polish in his offensive game than Daniel Theis is ever gonna have. Like Petrusev he could wind up being I don't want to say Sabonis, Domantas Sabonis. Sabonis used to have a different connotation than it does now, but I don't want to say he'll be a Domantas Sabonis kind of offensive player, but I think he could be a 18, 20 point scorer. I thought a little bit about like a Nikola Mirotic, but Mirotic just in the NBA just floats too much on the perimeter in a way that I don't think Petrusev ever will.
It's so weird because, again, a lot of it, I think it depends on team. I mean, Petrusev shoots the ball well enough to where, could I see a team say, I just want you to shoot threes? Right. Yeah. Do I think it's his best? Do I think that's the best uses of him? No, I think again, a Bobby Portis role would make more sense where he's more of a pick and pop guy who can also score around the paint. And I just think he's too good finishing around the basket to say just shoot threes. But I mean, his pick and pop numbers are elite for a big man coming into the NBA draft. He shot like 40% from three in pick and pop situations, which is just absurd. Yeah. And again, it's crazy to see the development from him as a freshman at Gonzaga to what he's doing in the Adriatic League. He was not that kind of player, and that suggests he may be able to get better at that. So when you say Mirotic, I understand it.
Do you think that he made the right decision leaving Gonzaga for his draft stock?
So it's weird. So for his draft stock, I'd actually argue no. I think that if he stayed at Gonzaga, Gonzaga may be the national champions. But I'll leave that on another end. But like regardless of that, like if he stayed at Gonzaga, the higher profile of seeing him every day, and Gonzaga's #1 in the country, they're undefeated. Like the hype around him would be a little different.
There's an obvious comfortability about what he's doing.
Right. But I think that he had to go to the Adriatic League. Like, he made a great move for his game because Gonzaga would never let him do any stuff he's doing overseas.
Yeah.
He would not have been asked to do that much pick and pop action, that much, face up action. Gonzaga they're too talented as a team. Like, they have too many good players, and they're just trying to, it's almost like, in some ways, it's almost like Kentucky with Calipari when they had all those guys. Like, a lot of it's just like, I need you to just fit a role and do this well. And like, I know you can do a lot of things, but we need you to just do one thing. When Filip Petrusev went to a really good team that allowed him to just do kind of whatever, like just whatever you're good at, we're gonna put you in all positions to succeed. And I think he got himself in better shape overseas because he was way more nimble, way more agile, way more athletic. I think
still very strong.
But he had all the strength. I think he definitely, I don't know if he even lost weight, but he might have just got more toned and chiseled over there. And I think his skill level improved. And Gonzaga is great with player development, but we just would not have seen that player at Gonzaga. It's one of the few cases where I would say leaving Gonzaga was the right move for his player development because there's no way he would have had that kind of season at Gonzaga the way he played overseas. So maybe the draft stock, maybe the name and stuff, it hurt him a little bit. But in terms of his game improved tremendously. So he made the right move.
He played last year with Bulls 2nd round pick Marko Simonovic. He played with him this season. He was a stash guy, and he was the alpha. He was the best player on the team. Both of them big men. He was the guy on that Mega Baymax team. So, just again. Now, look, Simonovic was a 2nd round pick. So, it's not. It doesn't mean that
But we'll see what happens with the mock drafts. Like, when I feel confident about a guy, it makes me feel like they'll get drafted higher than maybe the mock drafts are saying, and I feel great about Petrusev. Right. So, but I'm seeing late 1st round for him, some 2nd round stuff for him. Like, it's crazy to me. Like, Petrusev going in the 2nd round is insane to me.
Some of it is not even the devaluing of the big as much as it is like there are some college bigs that actually going ahead of him. I'm just like, really? Day'Ron Sharp.
Yeah,
Day'Ron Sharp. Not to call it Day'Ron Sharp. Yeah. We're talking about just one guy, but just some bigs where I'm like, this guy was average at the college level. Now I see a guy who's the MVP of the Adriatic League.
Yeah.
And
professionals.
Again, we did this with Nikola Jokic, and he ended up going to the 2nd round. We did it with Nurkic, and he was late 1st round when he probably should have been a lottery pick.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, to prepare for these series, I went through all of these drafts to find good comps, and like the amount of great big men from Europe, like Luis Scola was like late 2nd round, like guys who were like obvious 1st round picks, maybe lottery picks. And some of it is the stash thing, but I think it's beyond that. I think because some of these guys weren't stash guys; they came in immediately and played great.
Right.
There's something to the big men overseas. A lot of them have more skill level because they're not asked to just run and jump the way we've asked our big men in America to run and jump. And while they might not have some of the athleticism, they have some of the skill level that is still useful as we're learning. Right. When you watch Jokic win the MVP and some of these other European bigs,
like
thrive in
on the surface, Hassan Whiteside and Yusuf Nurkic are very similar, or like in terms of their ability, but the Nurkic was much more valuable for the Portland Trailblazers last season because of his ability to pass out of pick and roll. There's little nuances to some of these guys' games that teams are gonna. Now look, Day'Ron Sharp's gonna be a better shot blocker, gonna be a better athlete than Filip Petrusev ever gonna be. So a lot of it is what does your team need, but to me, it's interesting that
it is. It is
that he's not going to be a 1st round pick potentially.
Yeah, no, it is. But that's our video talking about some of the international prospects, and there will be plenty of other guys internationally also will probably get to some of these other videos, whether it be the comps or other generic draft videos. So again, if you enjoy this draft coverage, make sure you keep it locked here on New Generation Media. Make sure you give us a subscription there, subscribe. If you like this video, give us a like. And leave a comment. What do you think about these comps? Do you agree with our comps for some of these players? Are there guys that you guys have seen that you think are better comps for these international crop of prospects? Leave a comment in the comment section, and we like to respond to them, so we'll probably get to you and give our opinions on what you guys think. But enjoy this doing this video. Thanks, Kendall, for joining me. Thank you guys for checking this out. For Kendall, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.